Hello, dongrothoff with Focused Healthy Family. And once again, welcome to SendBack Saturday. And once again, I'm going to do just one more that one of our first, that was number 2, the second podcast we did. Unfortunately, again, it was audio only. And so I have the same video stuff that I had for this first SendBack Saturday one I did. And after this, I will be playing ones that are video. But this one is our second one that tells why we do what we do. And it was, like I say, one of the first, the second one we did in the series. So I thought it would be good to replay it again. And again, I put just some random video with it for something to watch while you listen. So I hope you enjoy it. And like I said, in the future, we should have ones that we'll be playing back from when we started doing the video work. But these two, I believe, were important to understand who we are and why we're doing what we're doing. So I hope you enjoy. And this is our podcast number 2 on SendBack Saturday. Take care. So it was a Saturday night, and pretty average Saturday night. My daughter had a friend over for a sleepover, and they were having a lot of fun. You know, she was there for part of the day, and you could always hear giggling and laughing coming from their room. Until that night, and I seem to remember it was about 9 o'clock. My daughter had gone into the bathroom, I guess to use the bathroom or to clean up or something. And something changed, because she came out and she was not that fun-loving little girl anymore. She was very anxious, and she came downstairs, and I remember her whispering into Gina's ear, and I didn't know what they were saying. I couldn't hear it, but I did hear Gina say, "What do you mean you can't go into your room?" And they went upstairs, and I followed them up there, and come to find out that for some reason, in the time that she went into the bathroom, the room had become dirty to her. And I'm not just talking about dirt, because we're a fairly typical family. We have dust bunnies under couches and beds and things, and typical dirt that you'd find. But this was different. And she described to me later on, not that night, but later on, years later, that it was hard to describe the dirt. It felt gritty to her. It was just a dirty sense to it that she couldn't walk in the room. And the toughest part about it was her friend was still in the room, and that scared her even more than not being able to go in the room, was how are we going to get her out? And we had a hard time with that. I can remember myself thinking, what is it? This isn't right. There's something wrong with this. And really thinking that, she probably just isn't feeling well. She probably ate something. But what we had to do, because we could not get her back in the room, Gina went around finding rugs, little throw rugs, and we gathered up as many as we could find to make a path into the room. 1, to get her friend out, and 2, just to get her to bed. And it took quite a bit to get her to bed that night. But we did get her to bed, and we kind of had that sense that it was just, she was just off that night. Little did we know what was to come for that, and what it was going to turn into. And that's really our topic for today, talking about why we're here doing what we're doing. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to just take a minute to get a word from our sponsor.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Q Sciences. Don and I discovered that the supplements we were taking and giving to our children were not being absorbed properly. I was very excited when I found Q Sciences. I was impressed with the quality of the products and that they provide maximum absorption. They have a variety of products, including a Q Max product, which is a combination of 3 products, including vitamins, minerals, and a probiotic. They also have hemp oil, a vitamin B12 spray, a sleep spray, and kids products. I've really seen a difference in how these products are improving how I feel, improving my mental health, and I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. Or you can find a link on the front page of the focusedhealthyfamily.com website.
and stop throwing your money away on supplements that don't work and use a quality product like Q Sciences.
So that's how it kind of started in my eyes. I know you talked about, you may have seen some signs of it before that.
Yeah, and I just want to welcome everybody to Don and Gina's Focused Healthy Family podcast. So our daughter was 8 at that time. She is now 19. And so that was when we really we realized she was suffering with obsessive compulsive disorder. There had been signs earlier on that we missed. I have a friend who suffers from obsessive compulsive disorder, and she had pointed out her overhand washing could be a sign of OCD. And I kind of said, nah, OCD
Not
is
our daughter.
when they're really organized and they're hyper-focused on being clean and neat.
Yeah,
and
washing hands.
Yeah, when we talk about her fear of dirt, it wasn't like messiness and dirtiness. No. She walked around barefoot. She doesn't care about dog hair everywhere, and her room's always messy. It's not that at all.
It's an inner sense of dirtiness, I guess, or something like that.
Well, yeah,
it's
an irrational fear. It's irrational dirt. So that began our journey of trying to get her help.
Yeah.
And going to lots of different doctors, regular medical doctors, chiropractor, naturopathic doctor, all kinds of alternative health practitioners.
Yeah, because it really, within weeks from that night that I talked about, it got worse.
Yeah, it got worse. I remember my grandfather had died that year, and somehow I traveled with the 3 kids
to New York?
Up to New Jersey. So Abby was 8, so our oldest was 12, and then the youngest was just a year old. And you didn't join us, Don, and somehow we made that work. We met my brother. We wound up sharing a hotel together, and so because she was with her cousins, it was manageable. But that was like the last big thing like that we were able to do for a while. Yeah. And we came home from that trip. Yeah, things just slowly got worse and worse.
Battles into the morning. We kind of, as a couple, as a family, really kind of walked on eggshells, not knowing when something might blow up, when something might happen that becomes dirty. Many times throughout, I became dirty to her, where she didn't want to be around me or deal with me.
Explain obsessive compulsive disorder, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. People think it's just neatniks, or people who are anal and want things a certain way, or compulsive. So obsessive compulsive disorder is having a irrational fear, or a rational fear that's taken to an irrational level, that causes the person to engage in compulsions, things that they feel like they have to do so that something bad won't happen.
When they think it's going to stop it by doing this a lot of times it's a repetitive checking. For our daughter, it was hand washing, and the tough part about it was there were 2-hour hand washings a lot of times.
Yeah. So this isn't just washing your hands a lot. This is, she had a whole ritual of how she washed her hands. You have to go over each part, and if she forgot where she was at, she started all over again. It was excessive amounts of soap. She also, when she felt things got dirty, she showered. I remember one time it was so long that the hot water ran out. And
it was a 4-hour shower.
She had to wait in there to shower again.
Well, you remember what that one time it was 4 hours was when any kind of event really caused a lot of anxiety for her, and if it didn't go the way she wanted it to, it would just send it off into the stratosphere of anxiety.
And it was positive events as well as stressful ones. Anticipation. When we would go on family trips and get together with family.
Well, it was that time your brother was going to come down, and he was going to come to the house first before we were going to parents.
Yeah.
And last minute, I remember the phone call because I was talking to him and he said, well, we're not going to be able to make it by the house. And I'm like, no, you can't.
My parents used to live an hour and a half from us on the lake. And so my brother would come down from Pennsylvania and we'd all go and spend a week at my parents' house on the lake. So yeah, he was going to stop first at our house and take Abby with him. She was very connected to her cousins, and that was very motivating to her. And that change in plans.
Oh, it just set it off. And like I said, it was a 4-hour, because I remember we had to keep turning the shower off to let it warm back up, and she would scream. So it was, the battles were.
And not just the change, but the anticipation of seeing them, like packing turned into this marathon nightmare of. She still is really stressed when she's packing, but it was a real challenge. Like it would just take a whole day to help her gather up enough clothing.
Well, she still kind of is.
That's what I mean. Packing is still difficult for her. So, and OCD doesn't have to look like a fear of dirt and hand washing.
No, it can be all kinds of things.
It can be avoiding. It can be avoiding people or areas or touching or
ruminating numbers and things in the mind, checking, rechecking a report, having to do so many, a number of, 5 times having to do one thing. And if you don't do it right, then starting over kind of thing. So it comes in a variety of ways. There's no one set type of.
There's lots of different subtypes, as you call it. We all have things we obsess or think a lot about. Say you're leaving the house and you're like, did I turn the stove off? And you might go back to the house, and you might check one time, right? So someone with obsessive compulsive disorder, they're going to keep checking. They're not going to be satisfied by checking one time. Yeah. And maybe they get in the habit of checking 3 times. So every time they do things, they've got to check 3 times. And then it might grow from that.
Yeah, OCD tends to grow with the anxiety and the compulsions grow and all that.
Yeah, and we later learned that giving into it, only makes it grow worse.
Well, because 11 o'clock or even sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, you're tired, you're exhausted, and you just can't battle any longer. You can't fight any longer, so you give into it. But it's not the best thing to do. But sometimes you have to kind of weigh those. You want to get to sleep tonight or continue.
And I want to let parents know, if you're concerned that your child might be suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder, if they have any type of anxiety, it's important to get professional help. It's important to go to your doctor. And if you suspect OCD, the International OCD Foundation website, so it's iocdf.org, is a great resource. In fact, that's where we went to find her therapist for her initially. Yeah, they have a
section to find a practitioner, And
we were able to find one who took our insurance. It turned out to be a great fit for her, too.
Well, and you want to make sure that, here's another thing, is not just any therapist. A talk therapist isn't always the best resource. You really want to be able to find somebody that understands ERP, or exposure response prevention therapy.
And that's why going to that website, if you're dealing specifically with obsessive compulsive disorder, you need a therapist who specializes in it, who fully understands what ERP therapy is and how to work with it, and they've had a lot of experience. And so that website gives you a list of therapists.
And you can also, we do another podcast called InvisibleWheelchair.com. And on there, I've interviewed quite a few therapists specializing in OCD, and some that even do the ERP and ACT, which is acceptance commitment therapy, which is another powerful one that works with OCD. One of the reasons we tell our story is really to empower other families that are going through this, to give them some hope. I know in all that we went through, we walked on eggshells a lot. I mean, it was very tense in our household.
And it was a lot of trial and error. We changed her diet. We learned the hard way you shouldn't go cold turkey off sugar.
Yeah.
I remember I had to hide the rice milk because we learned that almond milk was less sugar than rice milk, even unsweetened. And so we had all this rice milk because we were non-dairy. And I remember putting it on top of the refrigerator, and like an addict, she ran downstairs angry, I need the rice milk.
She tried to climb up the refrigerator.
Yeah, and sugar really, it kicks off endorphins in your brain. We had some recommendations to go off sugar, but you don't want to do that literally cold turkey.
Well, we took a lot of, it wasn't just sugar either, too. We took
anything that had added sugar in it, even any fruits. Yeah, we did the whole gamut.
Well, we did also dyes.
That we had looked at earlier.
Something
too.
I would recommend to anybody that's dealing with this is
to looking into the diet and different things.
Getting some I always call it about deeper testing to find out the imbalances that are going on, the diet things that are going, because there's a lot of foods that can trigger the anxiety, can trigger OCD. I know eggs was one of them that's even fairly common in OCD from what I've read.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did the allergy sensitivity testing. So it's the IgG. There's IgA, which is your traditional allergy, and IgG is more of a food sensitivity. And so that gave us a start. A lot of times just removing things in a diet can be the best way, because the clearest way to determine what foods we're sensitive to is to eliminate them from our diet. And then when you add them back in, seeing how it affects you.
Yeah, so it's really, for us, it's about helping other families that are going through it, especially the parents, to be able to have some hope.
Right, because, all the challenges we went through and all the different, we tried so many different things, like I was starting to talk about, going to different doctors. We went to a chiropractor I had been going to for years, and she did Eastern medicine, and I loved the different things she did. Yet she sat us down and said, she doesn't have a problem, it's your parenting style.
Yeah.
And luckily I knew better at that point. I had enough of a background between being an occupational therapist, having learned some things about mental illnesses, to know that that wasn't the case. And yet, we often doubt ourselves as parents. Are we doing things to make it worse? Did we cause this, right? And so to have a professional actually say that to us.
That was
the last time we went to her.
Another thing to understand with this is that the approach to recovery for it, or healing, is a methodical approach. The ERP is it's exposing them to what triggers their OCD or their anxiety, and then slowly exposing them to it and methodically exposing it. I think that's really important, because we've experienced, and I've seen it with other families too, we experienced the problem where we tried to push it too fast and too furious, and it backfired on us. Right. And sent her back in time, almost in her recovery process. So
it's important to find a professional. The IOCD Foundation website has some great information. There's also some great books out there that we found helpful. Talking Back to OCD by John S. March, MD. There's quite a number of different books. We have a library of them. Freedom from Obsessive Compulsive Disorder by Jonathan Grayson, Grayson, PhD. There's a great workbook. There's one for kids, because our younger daughter also suffers with OCD. The OCD Workbook for Kids. It's skills to help children manage obsessive thoughts and compulsive behaviors. So it's 28 activities that you do with your kids. And the good thing is you can kind of jump in anywhere with this book. It's good to kind of look through it. So we've done a number of these exercises. We've made copies of the pages to do with our child. So it's helpful. The child needs to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think it was good
we
defined it for...
And initially we resisted labeling it. I didn't want to label my child with something, right? I wanted to know, can we change this with diet, with different things? And yet what we realized is we needed to label what was going on. Because this person who suffers, they realize that what they're doing is crazy. Like, why am I doing this? This is ridiculous. This doesn't make sense. And yet their brain is telling them that they have to. So it can be very empowering to help that child understand, this is not your fault. You have this faulty mechanism in your brain. I like to describe it as you're not able to weed out junk mail. Back in the day when we got mail in a mailbox, now it's coming in through email. You sort out the junk mail. You throw out the junk mail, right? So we get different thoughts coming through our brain, and we're able to sort out the junk thoughts, the thoughts we don't need, right? So when you have obsessive compulsive disorder, you can't sort out those thoughts. So your brain just gets fixating on one thought over and over and over again.
And the thing about it is that you can't really be logical with it.
Yeah, you can't reason your child. Like, no, that doesn't make... You can step on your floor. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Let's just go to the bed and lay down. Yeah, you can't rationalize with it because it's not a rational... It's not a rational thought.
I remember with the bathroom, one of the... at our house, we have a two-story house, and our bathroom's on the second floor. And I would come in a lot of times with my daughter and find this pile of toilet paper in the trash. Never understood what that was about. And like I say, years later, she explained to me what her belief was in it was that somebody was able to climb up to the second story, come through a screened-in, locked window, and they would poison the toilet paper, so she would have to unravel it to get past the poison, throw it away, and then be able to use the bathroom.
And it's more that the possibility that could have happened.
Yeah.
It's that the possibility.
Yeah.
And she was worried about her toothbrush. There's a lot of what ifs that go on in the mindset. You know, getting the support you need is so crucial. And going through that struggle with her at the time, you had started doing some EFT training, something that I had done for my own self, helping my own self with my own personal issues.
Doing the tapping.
And so we utilized some of those skills with her. But in this process, you know, we wanted to help other parents. We want, no matter what the child is struggling with.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just about OCD. That was what, propelled us to do it. But that we really want to help anybody, and that's what we hope to do in this podcast, is to be able to give support. We want to do interviews and talk to professionals about all different sorts of things that affect families.
Early on with her diagnosis, from going to the therapist, at the time there were Yahoo groups. You have to be old enough to know what that is, before Facebook even. And so it was a group for parents of kids with OCD. And going on that list and reading people's comments, it was very reassuring to know, oh, wow, this kid has the same issues that my kid does. And, oh, wow, this is what they did. And on there, I did find a number of parents who said that if they brought their child to a just traditional psychotherapist, sometimes it made the OCD worse.
Yeah.
That if the person really didn't specialize and understand OCD and the treatment needed for OCD, it wasn't helpful to their child, and sometimes it did make things worse. So we want to give support to parents. We want to give you hope. Our daughter's 19 now. She's actually 3 hours away for the summer, living with a friend, working. She, and yet at the time when she was 9, in fact, things flared up worse for her when she was 11, and she got so stuck and she couldn't even step in the car. We had to do some exposure therapy with.
She couldn't touch us either. We couldn't touch her. She couldn't touch us, and that was.
So at that time, to think about her, living on her own and working on her own, it didn't seem feasible.
No.
Knowing the importance of getting the support and the help, and knowing that you can get through this, your child can get through this.
On the Invisible Wheelchair podcast, I actually interviewed her, and she wanted to
share a link to that. So
yeah, that's a good idea. But in it, she talks about her. Because I asked her, what would your advice be to somebody else that's going through this, and she said to have something to look forward to, some kind of. I don't think she used the word goal, but something to achieve out of it. Because she tells the story about her thing that she said in her mind that she wanted to do was to be able to touch and pet her dog again, Olive, our dog.
And the dog that we got for her, and because of her issues and struggles, she loves dogs. And yet when her OCD got real bad at age 11, she was so worried that everything was contaminated, she literally couldn't pet the dog. So that motivated her.
Yeah, it's having a goal, of what you want to achieve that can really help you to. And OCD is one that is, I never like to say it's curable, but it's manageable. And that's where I think our daughter, our oldest daughter, is at right now. Is it's manageable for her. She still, I think, has some issues with it, some kind of quirkiness to it.
There's some things she still avoids doing.
But she lives her life, and that's, one of the things about OCD is it kind of takes away and takes over your life if it's left alone. And if you can gain back your life, that's a big goal, I think.
And there are different degrees of OCD. We're talking about severe OCD with what she experienced. But if you can pick up from the signs early on, and that's one way I really want to help other parents, is to recognize these things before they get full-blown, and getting the help early on. Something I wish, we could have done for her before it got so bad that she was really dysfunctional.
And holding on to the idea of hope, holding on to the idea that you're not alone, you're not the only one going through this. But the other thing I think, too, is I think it's important to ask for help.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
To educate people, your friends, your family, to educate them on what's going on, because we kind of saw it in ourselves. The friends have a hard time.
When you're dealing with a mental illness, mental health issues, people don't know what to do with that. I remember when she was struggling and she couldn't go to Girl Scouts and ballet, and I wanted to educate. And the one person I asked, well, I'm not sure, I'd have to talk to the parents about it. And I remember thinking, if she had cancer, people would be rallying around her.
Oh, yeah.
They'd be sending gifts and love and support.
Bringing food.
And yet with this, like when you had your heart attack, people were bringing us food, going shopping, they brought us a chair. People don't know how to deal with things like mental illness. I had more people say, oh, okay, I don't want to bother you, I don't want to interfere. I remember meeting a new mom at Girl Scouts and talking about getting together, and I said, well, it's a little challenging. She's difficult around new people. And she's like, well, if it's not going to work out, oh, I don't want to bother you. And it's like, no, you need people to reach out. You need to ask, well, what can I do? How can I help? And it's hard to ask for support when you're struggling. So if you see other friends or family members who seem to be struggling, have a child that they're dealing with issues and you don't know what's going on, it can be so helpful to just reach out and say, hey,
how can I help? I'm here.
Or just bring them a meal or offer to...
Don't try to necessarily fix it, but don't be afraid to say, how can we be helpful to you?
Right, because you need that support. And well-meaning friends, they step
kind
away.
Of disappear somewhat.
They realize, oh, you're so busy with this, we don't want to bother you. And yet you become isolated and feel really alone.
And that's not just OCD. Again, it's anybody struggling with a mental disorder. That's the invisible wheelchair. The whole premise of that was, and I always tell the story. I had a teenager I was working with that was high anxiety, had trouble at school, and we're working together doing some coaching work with her. And one day she just blurted out, I wish these people could see my invisible wheelchair, and then they wouldn't tease me, they wouldn't bully me, they'd understand. And I think that's a big thing that was amazing, because it isn't, they don't always have a physical thing that sticks out.
Especially with some anxieties with kids, they might not manifest it when they're out in public. They kind of hide it. They kind of keep it together. Even there's kids who are suffering with OCD that don't share it with their parents. They're managing, right? They're dealing
doing the compensations.
They're dealing with it, and you don't realize, right? So people think, oh, they're fine. Maybe they're quirky or whatever. They don't realize what's going on and how much they're struggling.
Yeah. So education and asking and all of that is very helpful.
And having a professional to assess your child and figure out what is going on, right? And if you go to someone and you're not happy, the personality's got to be a good fit for you and your kid.
Mm-hmm.
I know with our youngest, finding the right personality has always been a challenge for her. And so go to somebody different. Reach out to different professionals, things that we've found helpful for both our kids, not only the therapist. We've done ERP work. Our youngest did occupational therapy. A lot of times there can be sensory processing issues that go hand in hand with obsessive compulsive disorder. And all you need is your doctor's order for occupational therapy treatment. There's so much that they can do to work with a child, work on frustration tolerance, a whole number of things that can play into this with OCD or any anxiety and other behavior issues as well.
So that's really the premise of what we're doing this for, is not just about our story, but wanting to help others and wanting to be a resource, a support for those that are going through maybe similar to what we went through.
And we got a list of the resources for you. Go to our website at Focused Healthy Family to learn more and learn about our upcoming communication workshops.
And we look forward to the next podcast. So thank you for joining us for this one, and we will
see you next time. That's our podcast for today. We hope you have enjoyed it. We would love to hear from you. Make sure to leave us a comment. If you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us for our next workshop. Find out at www.focusedhealthyfamily.com and follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. Remember, how you speak to your children shapes their future.